According to the American Diabetes Association, 37.3 million Americans have diabetes, and 1 in 5 of those do not know they have it. Diabetes management is crucial for preventing complications and improving quality of life. Now, do you or someone you love have diabetes? Stay tuned for some great remedies. Hello everyone, I am Raven White and I want to welcome you to Remedy Roadmap. Please note, while we discuss health-related topics, the information provided for this is for general knowledge and should not replace your primary care physician's advice. Always consult your healthcare provider for personalized care. So today I have 2 wonderful guests with me. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Helen Powell-Stoddard, founder of Pain to Wellness Healthcare and Reverse It Now, Inc., a lifestyle program that addresses and can reverse pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. And Sarai Rodriguez. She is a nutritionist at Wildwood Lifestyle Center. Thank you, ladies, for being here, and welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. So here's the thing. The question is, what is diabetes?
What is diabetes? That's a very interesting question.
Yes.
Diabetes is really a problem with utilizing the sugar that you take in.
Okay.
Your body needs sugar as its primary source of energy. And in order to do that, it has to go through a series of processes. Diabetes kind of slows that process down so that you're not able to use it. And then you end up with different symptoms. And particularly one in common that we see all the time is people start to experience fatigue because they can't really generate the energy that they need.
Now, break down the process, because I love physiology. So I'm obsessed with hearing it, and you speak it very well. Tell me a little bit more of what happens when I take in, let's say, a banana, right? Or I take in some bread. What is that process for a person who has diabetes?
Well, you take it in just like everybody else does, but during the process of breaking it down, the sugar molecules that are inside of each one of those in the bread or whatever you're eating at the time, your body is looking for that. It's like that's the preferred source of energy. It's the glucose. It wants that. But the problem becomes more apparent when during that process of having the blood sugar go through the bloodstream and then get taken into the cells, like your muscle cells or the cells of your body, it wants to go inside of those cells. And it goes through a process where there are these little signals on the cell of each one of those, or on each cell of the body that really attaches the glucose to it. It requires, though, the help of insulin.
Okay.
And insulin is secreted from the pancreas. It gets a signal when you start to eat. There's a signal that says, hey, I need some insulin because I need to get this glucose inside of my cell. Okay. So it enlists the help of the insulin to try to get through that receptor. The problem with type 2 diabetes or diabetes in general is that there are actually several issues, but the long-term effect or the effect of it, whatever the mechanism is that it can cause the blood sugar to not get inside of the cell, but instead it gets backed up into the blood.
Okay.
And so when it gets backed up into the blood, we call that an elevated hemoglobin A1C, and that's what those numbers are. Hemoglobin A1C really means how many of your red blood cells, because that's how sugar gets into the cells. How many of those red blood cells have tags of glucose molecules on it? And the problem with having these tagged glucose molecules is that inside of a blood vessel that I would say is like a water hose, if you imagine a water hose, or even better, if you were in a tunnel, if you're driving through a tunnel, say in New York, and you decided to be creative and stand on the top of the car, and you're driving on the car, and as you go, you're too tall for the tunnel, and so you're scraping the inside of the tunnel with your head. that's called inflammation. And so those blood glucose molecules are just too much for the blood vessels themselves, and it's scraping the walls of the inside of the blood vessels and causes inflammation as it goes through.
Oh my, I don't think I've ever heard it that way. This is why I love your mind. So tell me, how does a person get diabetes? And maybe I shouldn't ask this one first, but I want to. Is there a difference? I've heard that there are like type 1, type 2, type 3. And granted, I want to focus on type 2 today, but
Sure.
Can you at least give me a general of the different type 1, type 2, type 3, or there's a type 3 at all?
Absolutely, sure.
Okay.
So there's a type 1 diabetes, and type 1 diabetes is really a problem with producing insulin. Like
Okay.
your body does not produce insulin. So the pancreas has been damaged. So the cells inside of the pancreas that are called the beta cells, they get damaged. And because they're damaged, they're not able to secrete insulin. So those people have to have exogenous insulin, or they have to be given insulin in order to metabolize the sugar that they eat.
Okay.
In type 2 diabetes, there's a bit of a difference. Your body can produce insulin, it's just that your body doesn't recognize it.
Oh.
For some reason. So your body doesn't recognize it, and then after a while it gets tired, and then you may end up on insulin because the cells are no longer working. And then type 3 diabetes, interestingly, is actually what we call Alzheimer's. So because there's some problems with the regulation of blood sugars going to the brain, because your brain needs that glucose, it causes something called, it causes memory loss. And so we call Alzheimer's a type 3 diabetes. But then there's also prediabetes, and that just means that I'm having problems metabolizing my sugar, but it hasn't gotten bad enough to call it diabetes.
Okay, okay, wonderful. So now we go to the next question of, how does a person get diabetes?
Ooh, yeah.
Can we talk about lifestyle?
Come on, let's talk about lifestyle.
You know, I'm really glad that you mentioned inflammation, because actually that's kind of what it comes to mind when we talk about diabetes or
Yes.
any chronic disease.
Yes.
Because that's exactly what inflammation is. Actually, is the root cause of every chronic disease. So if you're struggling not only with diabetes, but cancer, but autoimmune disease, you need to understand that there are there's inflammation in your body. So when I think, okay, there is inflammation in my body, that's triggered by lifestyle.
Yes.
What am I doing that is causing this inflammation? So that's one of the things that I like to talk about when I give my lectures at Wildwood, is like, I'm not interested in people becoming vegan. I'm not into that. Why is that? Because French fries are vegan, right? They are not healthy. Oreos, right?
Oreos,
They
yes.
are vegan. That is something that I call deliciously poisonous stuff, right? Because they taste good, but they are causing inflammation. So what actually I'm interested is in an anti-inflammatory diet.
Absolutely.
And an anti-inflammatory diet, you can only find it in a whole food, plant-based diet.
Okay.
There is no other way.
Okay.
So when I think of diabetes, okay, let me think, what have I been doing in my lifestyle when it comes to food? For example, I brought this. This is a chicken sauce, something like that. And one of the things that I want to motivate the audience is to start reading their labels.
Absolutely.
Diabetes or any chronic disease doesn't happen overnight. Oh, like I have so many guests that say, I was doing so good, I was so healthy, and suddenly last week they diagnosed me with diabetes.
Last week.
And I'm like, well, it didn't happen last week.
Right.
It was building up. Now let's find out how I was building up all of these problems in my body. So when we read our labels, right, then we start to understand. And one of the things that I like to say is, when you're reading a label and you're like, how do I pronounce this word? If you don't know how to pronounce it, what makes you
Your body
think
will know.
that your body will be like, oh yeah, I will put in.
I know that word.
Right,
I can't break that
yeah. So that's like, okay, now what do I do with you? Like, where do I put it? And then all of these toxins start building up in your system. So let's put an example. When we're reading a label, the first ingredient means that this is the main component or the main ingredient that is going to be in this specific product. Now, and then of course the last one is like the list, right? So what is the first ingredient in this sauce?
Sugar.
Well, you're close.
Oil.
Is that high fructose?
Oil.
Oh, yeah.
Oil.
Yes, so it is soybean oil. Now, what happens with vegetable oils? Hey, vegetables, right? That means it's healthy. No.
No.
So it's highly processed. It's been through this highly high heat process that is changing its chemical composition, now converting something, a healthy fat, converting it into a highly inflammatory product. So we're seeing that here the first ingredient is already giving me inflammation. Now the second ingredient.
I know it has to be there.
High fructose corn
Good
syrup is
answer.
probably in every sauce that you can
And
see.
you know it's banned. I was told that it was banned in every other part of the country, or the world, and not in America. So it's like, why is America having something that will damage us, but other countries are like, no, you won't even bring it into the country.
And now we are seeing that Americans are really struggling with obesity. And one of the things that research have shown is that they are consuming too much high fructose corn syrup. So plus diabetes. What are we putting in it? It's just a lot of calories that we are in highly processed products. Now, third ingredient?
What?
Sugar. So we already have oil, high
fructose corn syrup,
and
and
sugar.
then
And another sugar.
And another
Another
sugar.
And I bet if you keep reading, there's another sugar on there.
Probably. So, and then we have vinegar. Highly irritant. It's an irritant to your stomach. Now, I'm going to make a parenthesis here because when we talk about irritants, anything that will irritate the lining of my stomach, I do not compromise that because I understand that my gut is responsible 80% of my immune system. So if my immune system is compromised, I don't want to see to do anything to see with anything that will irritate or compromise my immune system. So vinegar, and then there are some other ingredients. Oh yeah, you're right. Then I don't understand this. Corn syrup.
Yep, another one.
Okay, so but I'm going to summarize this with ta-da-ta-tan-ta-tan.
Natural flavors?
How did you know? Exactly.
It's in
Natural flavors is in everything.
Everything.
And we don't know what they never tell you what the
You
natural
don't
flavors
know
are.
exactly.
I think they're hiding also MSG in
the
natural,
natural
flavors.
Probably. Exactly. So when I first heard this, because I was one of the ones that never read I liked it. It looks good. Oh, the label looks nice. So I
Must be
bought it
healthy.
and it tastes good, right? So it's like, well, natural flavors. That's something natural. Don't you understand?
it's
Don't you know how
natural,
to read
exactly.
natural? Natural is
That's
natural.
where the color comes from. on
Right.
orange.
But cow dung is natural.
So you see, it's like, and a lot of additives that they put in this product, so you keep buying it, right? It's not that they are interested in your health, but in the money that they are making through it. So please, start reading your label.
Right.
I also think one of the things that we are that we believe is that it's difficult to make a sauce.
Right.
It's not hard to make this.
Right.
Right. If I wanted to make a sesame sauce,
Right.
I can take some sesame seeds, some garlic.
Go ahead.
I can take some maple syrup. I can take some water, and I might put a little ginger in it because I'm just into anti-inflammatory things. Put that in my high-speed blender. Maybe even put some nuts in it or some tahini in it, and mix it in and pour it over whatever I want, and it's absolutely delicious.
Amen.
I used ingredients that I pulled out of my cabinet. I know exactly what they are, and I don't have to worry about trying to pronounce them.
Right. Exactly.
This one also has molasses. I like molasses, so I don't have a problem with that. But that's a sugar plus a corn syrup.
But
Plus
where is it in the list?
Oh, it's down in there. It's down there.
Exactly.
It's not at the top. It's at the bottom. Even like I can make barbecue sauce. There are a couple of brands now that you can find that don't have high fructose corn syrup in it, but you really have to look for them. And that's why, as Sarai is saying, it's important to read your labels.
Right. Now keep this in mind. I don't know if I'm accurate because someone has, I'm reading a lot of things, right? And someone has said, when you look at maybe the 1, 2, 3, that's really the majority. Everything else is speckles. It's just to say, yeah, we've done good.
But
you know?
still, yeah.
Right.
And it's only a
Because
little bit.
sometimes you find natural flavors in, almost the last
Right.
ingredient,
Yeah.
but it's still there.
It's
Right.
still there.
So, and one of the things is that when you see and you're looking at your nutrition fact or your label and it says added sugars, which we already see all of these, I don't buy it.
Right.
So what are you compromising? Is
And
it worth it?
I'm so glad you said that, because one of the questions I like to ask in my mental health class is, how much fruits and vegetables, the percentage, is in rat poisoning? And everyone usually says 0. Some people realize if I keep asking, they're like, okay, it will go high, 50%. And it's like, it's 97% fruits and vegetables in rat poisoning. It's only 3% that kills the rat, right? And so it may be low on the list.
That's what we're
right?
saying. Is
But
starting
it can still
building
kill
up.
you.
It will still cause us damage, right? Tell me a little bit about fiber when it comes to diabetes, because a lot of things, what I'm hearing is sometimes they go get Metamucil, I think that's what it's called. and so people sometimes are throwing away their burgers with, well, at least the tomato and the lettuce, and they'll just eat the burger, right? Because it's still meat, so it must have some fiber in it. And then there's the next extreme, like, well, now I need Metamucil to be able to help me out, because I guess they didn't realize the tomato and the lettuce was good for them. But tell me something about fiber when it comes to diabetes.
So I think, or the way that I like to explain fiber is like the security guard in the gut. Or it's like, okay, glucose, not too quick. We need to process all of these fiber first, because every single food in the whole food plant-based world has sugar, has some kind of carbohydrates, right? I'm not going to go into details into that, but so there is sugar.
Right.
Now what fiber does is that it stops that glucose from jumping really quick to your bloodstream. And if that happens, then we have all these spikes, right, in glucose. Now, when we drink orange juice, orange is great. If you eat the orange,
Right.
you're chewing, you're taking the time to chew, right?
Which also takes time for the glucose to be
Exactly.
Because there are people that they just drink their food, right? And like 1, 2, 3 inside, chew your food. And then there is fiber in it that says to the glucose in the fruit, wait, not so quick. But then we do the orange juice, we drink it, there's no fiber in it.
Right.
I mean, orange is healthy, but now there is no fiber anymore, so it says, yay, free pass, and it passes through the bloodstream. Then that's when people start struggling because there is so much sugar in the blood, and I'm like, my cells are able to hold onto certain amount of glucose, and now I'm like, what do we do with all of this amount of glucose in my bloodstream?
So when I was at UT Pines, just grieving with about my family's passing, they actually did my blood work, and they said that my insulin level was high. And they said, Raven, granted we realized it was stress, but one of the things that they told me is, Raven, when you take a carb, make sure you have some protein with it, right? And I was like, oh, that was pretty interesting, because I was wondering what's the ratio that I'm supposed to have to equal out your carb with your protein. Tell me some more about that.
Well, that's one of the first classes we give in Wildwood is like, let's show you how to eat a balanced meal. And I'm going to take a little bit back. When I'm seeing the guests individually, I'm like, I want to know what they've been eating, because that is a factor that triggers any disease. Like, I want to know what you've been doing regarding your meals. And guess what? Fruits and vegetables are not much in the picture, right? So what happens is that we want to show them, this is how you eat a balanced meal. So always in your meal, at least 50% of your plate should be raw, fruits or vegetables. You need to have that. And I'm just going to make a parenthesis because they are high in phytochemicals. And phytochemicals have has an amazing job to do in your health, because it helps fight inflammations. It strengthens your immune system. It prevents your DNA from damaging it in case it has been damaged because of all the weird things that we put in, right? Then it helps to repair that DNA. But another great thing is that it helps to slow cancer cells from growing. So we want to make sure that we tell them, hey, make sure that you're eating plenty of raw fruits and vegetables because of the powerful impact that it will have in your health. Now let's jump into the other half. We divide that plate in 1/4, and that should be your carb. And the other 1/4 should be your protein. Now, in the plant-based world, what happens is that we don't have complete proteins or the amino acids, right? So the cereals, they have some protein. By the way, bananas have protein. Many people are concerned about if I become plant-based, I will be deficient in protein. And I'm like, no, you're not.
That's never the problem.
That's not a problem. The problem is when you are consuming a lot of animal products that you are having a lot of protein, and then your kidney is like.
And just to interject there, it's just the animal proteins are a lot larger for your kidneys than plant proteins. And so you'll see it's almost like you're struggling going up a hill trying to digest the foods through, or for the kidneys to actually filter those big proteins. And so the plant proteins are much smaller. They go right through.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
Yes. Great. And one of the things is that we don't have to concern too much about, am I getting enough protein? Because let us have protein. And it's so interesting because our creator was the one that designed the food that we needed to eat.
Right. We need a whole separate show on that.
We do. A
whole separate.
Yes. So, fruits, vegetables, cereals or grains and legumes, they all have in these specific orders carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. That's how what your body exactly needs in those specific orders. So when we are eating the cereal, we want to combine them with the legumes or with the beans to make complete proteins. Now there are some exceptions in the whole food plant-based world, like quinoa is a complete protein, soy is a complete protein, chia is a complete protein, right? But other than that, we want to combine them. And I don't only want to say that, but we also want to include variety.
Yes.
So when we talk about portions and things like that, it's not something that I really want to stress too much about that. Just have the visual thing. Half of your plate fruits and vegetables, 1/4 of your plate carbs and protein. And basically that's kind of easier for you. And when you're in a whole food plant-based diet, you don't have to worry too much about, oh, my insulin is going to, there is fiber in it.
Yes, and fiber really carbs, I think that carbs have been demonized, and they're said, you need to stay away from carbs, and so people think they should not eat fruits and vegetables because those are carbs. But fruits and vegetables come with, they're equipped to not only fight any types of diseases, to fight inflammation because of all the phytonutrition that's in them, but they have fiber with it. So when you eat it, you're eating fiber and the carb at the same time, or fiber and the sugar at the same time. And so your blood sugars, instead of going up like this, it stays steady like this. And the other thing that happens with that is that because you're eating the fiber with it, you're less likely to have a spike in your insulin. And insulin is a fat storage hormone. And so if you have these spikes in insulin like you do when you eat the high fructose corn syrup, you'll notice a little tire around the waist. And then, you want to be able to kind of puncture that tire so it can come down, and you want to do that by just making sure, one of the ways is making sure that you have fiber with your sugar, so just those fruits. So instead of people taking an apple and peeling the apple, eat the whole apple, right? Don't peel the skin, just make sure you wash it really well. Eat the whole apple with the skin. The skin has fiber, although there's some fiber inside of the apple, but there's more sugar inside of the apple than it is on the skin. So the skin has the fiber. So God made it so that you have the fiber and the sugar, because you need both.
So, again, can I eat the whole apple?
Well, you can eat the skin of the apple and you can eat the flesh of the apple and just discard the seeds. The seeds have a small amount of cyanide in them, and so there's some studies that may show that it can be poisonous. So we just discard the seeds, but eat the apple and eat the skin.
Okay. So here's another thing. Usually people say eat 6 meals a day, and I definitely know they say that for diabetics. Really quickly with the time, is that true?
One thing that they are forgetting is how your stomach works. It takes about 4 to 5 hours to digest one meal, and usually we want to give another hour to let it rest. So if we're doing that, you know, every 2 hours or every 3 hours we are constantly eating, there is no time for my stomach. And remember, inflammation, I want to make sure that I'm keeping my guts good, because if that has to see with immune system.
Hey, one thing I do know is that when we do eat so much, people will say, well, it's helping you lose weight, and it has all these positives to it, but no one tells you the negatives.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, yeah, and I just remember is that it takes 80% of my body's energy to digest one meal. That's the other thing that I wanted to say. So if I'm constantly eating, it's not only that I'm not letting my stomach to rest, but also all the energy of my body is focusing all the time in the gut with lower G, in my gut, which is my stomach at this point.
Right.
So
I think sometimes
I don't think that's it.
when the world is coming up with information.
I don't recommend it. I don't recommend 6 meals.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. I think that they're not thinking about the whole person, right? What the person is going through and what it's going to take for them to have to now, you know, take this information, think I'm doing good, to find out it's actually hurting me. It's a lot, right? Compared to everything else a person is going through in their life now, who do I trust? What do I trust? I mean, we know we can trust the Word of God, right? But even then, sometimes when people are not truly educated on these things that you're speaking about, and then you're the good Christian doctor and you tell me this, then I really get confused, right? If people really understand that Satan is playing the long game, just to confuse us. But I want you to quickly give me at least one mile marker that you want to give a person and say, hey, try this today. That will help you with your diabetes.
Why don't you go ahead?
Oh, yeah, so exercise is extremely important. And one of the things that I recommend the most is exercising before breakfast, fasting.
All right. And
I
you?
like that. I recommend that. I stamp approval on that. The other thing is that doing a digestive walk after you eat.
Okay.
Right? And so that works very well too. I also recommend cutting the fat out of your diet and reading your labels, like you said.
All right. Thank you so very much, ladies. I appreciate you for coming and being on the show. And I also want to leave you with the mile marker on a spiritual note. Jeremiah 30, verse 17 says, for I will restore health unto thee, and I will heal thee of thy wounds, saith the Lord. And 3 John 1:2, beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospers. So I want to thank you, audience, but I want you to know this in mind. God can do all things through you. Greater he that is in you than in the world. Do not be discouraged, but trust in him. See you next time.